All right, so let's go to this interview now. You'd remember every Sunday we get a briefing from the Electricity Minister, Hossein Siramakgopa, and this time he was talking about the transmission infrastructure as well as the ambitious plans around this particular one. I mean, requiring hundreds of billions of rands. You're thinking about 2025, where there would be, of course, around 100 billion rand required. But does the Eskom balance sheet, fit these into its plans? And of course, there's also concerns even around how much of this will result in us seeing the end of load shedding. Are we even closer? You think about the congestion of the grid as well being one of those many issues that needs to be looked into, issues like red tape. So let's have this conversation now and speak to Ruse Moleshe, who is a development finance specialist in the energy and infrastructure space. Ruse, thank you so much for your time this evening. A lot of people are saying that some of these plans around, the transmission infrastructure are quite ambitious and we may not be able to realize this. What do you think?
Good evening to you and good evening to the viewers. Some of these plans are ambitious in the sense that they would need to be far more rolling out of power lines as well as transformers than they have done before. And we still know that the Eskom balance sheet is constrained. And in terms of the plans are there, but they are not yet finalized. The minister alluded to the fact that they would need to look at private sector arrangements, but there's nothing that is really concrete in that regard. So it's all plans that are still in action. The reason why this is so important is because if you have new generation capacity that comes in, you need to be able to transmit that power to where it's supposed to go. So without the relevant infrastructure, then you will be constrained.
And what does this mean then if you juxtapose it with our industrial capacity, because we know what has happened to that over time?
Our industrial capacity, the economy in general, not just industry, suffers as a result of a shortage in the generation capacity. So in order for us to try and resolve the generation capacity, we need to bring in new power plants, whether it's sources of renewable energy or anything else. To do that, we need to be able to have the power lines to be able to transport it to where it's supposed to go. So we now have not only a generation supply challenge, but we now have a transmission supply challenge which constrains us from adding new capacity.
And I wonder, though, just when we talk about generation and we talk about new power being added to the grid, a lot of people are saying that, NERSA announcing its approval for the, of the operating license for National Transmission Company of South Africa. That is quite a significant step, particularly when it comes to dealing with some of the concerns around red tape. And I wonder if you agree with some of those who are looking at it through those eyes.
What it will do is it will allow other generators to be able to sell to this national independence. It will be independent from Eskom generation, and therefore anybody will be able to sell to that. But it will also be responsible for rolling out the transmission infrastructure. It will also be responsible for managing the system operator to make sure that the system works in line with what it's supposed to do. That does not help in terms of currently with respect to the infrastructure that will still require that infrastructure, and we need to have a plan that is implementable in order to alleviate the problem that you have. However, not to be too negative, we do expect that the Kusile coal-fired power plant, the 3 units that are off, may be coming in November and December. And so that may reduce the intensity of load shedding. But if we are planning for the economy, for industry and all of that, we ought to be much more ahead.
And, you know, while one thinks about all of these ambitious plans, and there's also the real, you know, concern around some of what we've seen through, you know, vandalism of key infrastructure, also around, you know, even issues at Eskom itself, where we even saw as they unfold in Parliament. Now, one thing that South Africans are also looking at is that while these plans are being put in place, as ambitious as they are, and possibly money gets put on that particular project in order to make sure that we alleviate load shedding as a country. But there is also that concern to ensure that we resolve some of the issues around the infrastructure, we resolve some of the issues around, you know, even governance as well as supply chain issues at Eskom.
Yes, I mean, there's a lot of effort that has been made to try and turn around the Eskom's fortunes. One of those is when the board was fully constituted. There was a time when it had about 7 vacancies, and when one of them is also to make sure that the board subcommittees have all the relevant skills that are required to help drive, whether it's making sure that internally there are controls to avoid those kind of leakages where stuff gets stolen and that kind of thing. And also there's a budget set up for specific spending on diesel, which is required, and all sorts of things. So from a governance turnaround, internal controls point of view, there are some strides that are being made by the new board that came in. And we do see some progress in that regard. But obviously, these are long-term issues. They are legacy problems. It will take some time to turn around.
Ruse, thank you so much for your time this evening. Do appreciate it. And as you say, some of the legacy problems need to be given time in order to be resolved. But let's see then what happens with some of the ambitious plans that the minister unveiled as he looks into some of the issues to really alleviate the pressure that is caused by rolling blackout. That's Ruse Moleshe. She's the development finance specialist in the energy and infrastructure space.